The FujiCast is an independent loading zone production.
Wednesday, 1st of April.
The FujiCast.
Hello, Kev.
Hello, Neil.
It's not April 1st. It's not, well, in terms of April Fools, rather. It is April 1st, but not April Fool. There's nothing in the least. We didn't do any tricks this morning on us. It just did not seem appropriate. No. Usually we, fill up the teapot with cold water or something like that, every year. No, not the cold water trick again, but we didn't do any of that this year. Did you get involved in April Fool?
I don't think I ever have, to be honest with you.
No, have you never done April Fools?
It's never really been a thing for us.
Oh, no, we always do something. Not this year. We decided to have a moratorium on silly jokes on each other. Just for this year. Back with full vengeance next year. So I had a couple of... I feel like I've been your personal secretary overnight. People asking me, what was that television programme that Kev was talking about? Raoul in particular said, was it very interesting? It was The Detectorists, wasn't it, in the end?
The Detectorists, yeah, it's ace.
Have you watched it? I looked it up, actually, very quickly, and it features the chap that was in The Office. What's his name? Oh, can't think of his name.
Mackenzie Crook.
Oh,
do you know what? Just before we came on, Gemma said... you know that guy that asked the other day about the things that you find annoying about each other?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah. She said, I'm going to come on and I'm going to say what I find annoying about the pair of you is you can never damn remember a frigging thing. It's like two old men in an old person's home trying to remember 80 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, hang on. Just doing the podcast.
All right, I'm just going to shops.
All right. See you later.
Is that Kev?
It is Kev, yeah.
Ask if he needs anything from the shop.
Kev, do you need anything from the shop?
No, Gemma's just got me my beer. Thanks.
Gemma's just got the beer.
Don't forget to wash your hands when you get back.
Don't forget to wash your hands.
All right.
Yeah.
See you later.
Okay. It's normal life, you see, Kev, this, isn't it? Hey? I need to have a light outside this door that says recording in progress. Should I edit that bit out or just leave that in? I'll leave it in.
Leave it in.
Leave it in. It's life. Yeah, but Gemma is right, actually, because we are like that. We kind of fuel...
What was it? What was the question again?
We fuel each other with that. It's like Alas Smith and Jones. Do you remember the two boys? They sat opposite each other on that desk and talked to each other, and gradually they kind of forgot as they were going along the things that they were talking about. Do you remember that show? No, you don't.
Yeah, I do remember that show. Yeah, Griff Rhys-Jones and
Mel Smith.
Yeah, didn't one of them died? Didn't they? Not Griff Rhys-Jones.
Mel, I think. Yeah, Griff Rhys-Jones is still alive. Yeah. Right. Should we delve into the questions here?
Go for it.
Hi, Neil, Kev, aka The Boys, long-time listener, first-time caller. Started my swim into the Fuji waters. This is very poetic. This one when the XT100 hit the streets, then procured the XT3 upon its release. Have you ever procured a camera, Kev?
Procured?
Well, bought. Yeah, it's just a posh way of saying bought.
I thought it was like ham. Isn't that like procured ham?
No, that's cured. Upon its release, which has solidified me as a Fuji shooter. That being said, I was really intrigued by several Panasonic and Olympus cameras. Seems like the primary comparison is always between full frame versus APS-C, but M43 seems to rarely form part of the conversation. I follow several people like Micro 4 Nerds and James Popsis on YouTube.
Micro 4
Nerds. I love that. I'm going to have to look that one up. Who are I know James's work. I quite like James on YouTube. He's very self... what's the word? What's the word I'm trying to think of?
Depreciating?
No, that's when you lose your value. Let's just give ourselves because you know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, he's very funny, James Popsis. Finally, my question. Have either of you had experience with a Micro Four Third ecosystem? And how would you feel about the technology as suitable kit for photography? Well, James uses it, and obviously the Micro Four Nerds guys do. But what do you think? Have you ever used one of those Micro Four Nerds cameras?
I don't think I have.
There's some Dave Eskridge, by the way. Thank you, Dave.
I think some of the older, like Fujifilm what's they call it, the X10 or the X20 or something, they'd brought out lines of little point and shoot things. I think they were 1-inch sensors rather than 4/3. But no, not really. The thing that there are some great photographers shooting with like the Olympus system and everything, which is Micro 4/3. But I think generally it always comes down to prints, doesn't it? The print sizes and what you can get out of them. Yeah. And of course, the depth of field issue that the people who complain about the difference in APS-C and full frame and so no, I'd never really have, and but I do know people that do use it and do use it very well.
That bokeh thing, bokeh thing that people talk about. I had a question actually on my YouTube channel from somebody yesterday. Was thinking about changing systems, but it was based entirely upon my answer to the following: Will the 35 1.4 deliver a similar kind of look to my Canon 50mm L series 1.2? And I just simply said no, because it won't. It won't look the same at all, and I didn't believe that was the reason why you should choose a camera, to be honest. But
be nearer a kind of f2 type depth field, 2.2 or something like that. Yeah, even the 56 1.2 is kind of the equivalent of 1.8 in full frame depth of field. Kind of look and feel. Light gathering, obviously, it's the same, but no, it won't.
Mark Simmons, howdy boys. As many of us are now self-quarantined here in the States, I was killing a bit of time by getting sucked into YouTube. Here's an interesting guy. This is something I would suggest everybody. I've watched this movie. I watched it this morning when I first started reading through some questions we were going to have today on the show. Brian Shul. Have you ever heard of Brian Shul? There's no reason why you would have done, unless you've seen this film.
Well, no. I did used to play rugby with an American guy called Brian Shul.
I'm not sure it's the same Brian Shul.
SCHULL?
SCHUL. Close.
No. Definitely not.
Anyway, this Brian Shul flew the SR-71 spy plane, Blackbird to most people, who also happens to be a photographer. And he gave me a link to the YouTube video. Can we put this on? We'll put this YouTube link on the show notes. Yeah. It's brilliant. He does the funniest speech ever. And a link to the gallery. And I wasn't sure whether he was suggesting, but he'd probably be quite an interesting guest, wouldn't he? A photographer that flew a spy plane.
Yeah, the Brian Shul I knew was a dustbin man. Very good one, but definitely didn't fly spy planes.
Definitely not that one. You've been on a few sort of interest. But am I right in thinking that you've been on and I know you don't like flying, but you've been on a few sort of real bone shakers not that the SR-71 was, but you've been on a few real bone shakers since being an ambassador for Fuji, haven't you? Because you've flown a lot more places.
Oh yeah, I've had some real hairy flights, but I think there's some of when you have hairy flights, then it becomes the norm, doesn't it? I remember once when I first, this is a bit of a long story. I don't know if we've got time for it,
I'm ready.
I'll cut it really short.
Hang on a minute, long story.
Warning.
When I split up with my first wife, one of my good friends, Mick, who was a pilot, had a license for a little flying little aeroplanes, and I'm racing through this story.
No, said, don't race. Kev, take your time. Take your time.
I'll take you. No, because it's really long. Okay. I'll take you up in my little aeroplane.
Right.
I said, okay, fine. So he picked, and I was terrible at flying in those days. He took me over to Biggin Hill. We got out and we went to check in because obviously you kind of rent a plane. And the guy behind the counter said, "Oh, you haven't flown for a while, have you, Mr. Mick?" We'll just call him Mr. Mick. He went, no, not for a little while. At that point, I was like, should we just go to the pub? And so they said, right, because you want to take a passenger up, you have to take off and land 4 times with an instructor first, just to make sure everything's all right. So I sat there and watched him take off and land 4 times, quivering. And he passed. And so we got into this aeroplane. We pushed it onto the runway. He pulled out his big...
Hang on a minute. You pushed the aeroplane onto the runway?
Yeah, it was only a little thing. It was like a wheelbarrow with wings.
Oh, word. Okay.
And we pushed it onto the thing, and then he pulled out all these Post-it notes and started sticking them on the windows. And it was like, step 1, press this. Step 2, press that. And I was like... Mick, you do know what you're doing, right? And he's like, yeah. This is the logbook, not the logbook, the checklist. It's like, right, okay. So as we were hairing up the runway, I said, Mick, should this window be open? He said, oh no, shut the window.
Oh my God!
Up we went, took up over the M25 or whatever. We must have got, I don't know, about 600 feet up or whatever. And Biggin Hill were like, flight number, blah, 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 clear to leave Biggin Hill airspace. And I went, I think we should go back. I think we should go back.
Did you not go any further?
And about 2 minutes later, Mick went back on the radio. He said, Biggin Hill, this is flight such and such, requesting rejoin. And because we'd only just taken off, they thought we were in trouble. And they were like, do you need emergency? Is it an emergency?
No, we just got Kev.
Yeah, no, I just got an idiot on board. So we landed and then we went to the pub, which was far more fun for me.
You not thought about taking flying up then?
I did think about it, actually. You know what? Because Kemble and stuff, and they do these, 1,500 quid teaches you how to fly an aeroplane or something. And then I decided, actually, I would just punch myself in the face repeatedly. It'd be a lot cheaper, much more comfortable.
No, I think you'd enjoy it. My hairiest. It wasn't quite the same experience, but I remember being on what you might call an upside down hover mower for the first time with a pilot when I was working in the B with the who flew the Royal Navy Sharks, which is like the helicopter equivalent of the Red Arrows. And I remember being in this display, and I looked across, and I was really nervous. I was thinking, what on earth? Because it's a very bizarre feeling, a helicopter for the first time. And he hovered it right in the air, a couple of thousand feet up, however far we were up, just about to start the display. And I said, what are you doing? He said, well, in a second, I'm going to dump this lever and we're just going to fall under no power, really. I said, you can't turn an engine off in a helicopter. He said, yeah, you can. He said, it's called auto-rotation and we'll drop pretty quickly. And I said, all right, give me an idea of how quick this drop is going to be. He said, imagine you're sitting on a piano 2,000 or 3,000 feet in the air, however far we were, and he said, and it's being held up by a big crane, and somebody snips the wires on that big crane. I said, yeah. He said, that's exactly what it's going to feel like. And he wasn't wrong.
Oh my God, I would never, that would just, did your head not hit the roof?
No, because I was strapped in. So
my Lord.
It's a very quick drop, I promise you that. Anyway.
Well, no, I'm all right with flying now, but I don't. I would draw the line as a helicopter. Yeah. I think. Yeah.
One from Adam Belcher. Dear Neil and Kev, I've emailed before. Love the show. Very grateful for these extra shows you've been doing recently. Now working from home and only venturing out once a week for the food hunt. My question's about printing. I used to print my own work recently with the Epson R2880, or how you suppose 2880, or however you're supposed to say the name, printer and inks, and a range of almost mortgage-priced papers. My family used to think I was mad coming home with a box of 25 sheets, A3, 50 quid a pop. I was happy until my printer started splatting ink randomly all over the paper and was left with a defunct printer and supplies. Came to realise after using an online lab and getting prints back, particularly on Fujifilm's own super gloss polyester-based Fujiflex papers, that the quality is superb, especially when you ensure your computer is correctly colour profiled. Do you guys print your own work, or do you use online labs? I think I know that Kevin uses an online lab. Do you use an online? I know because you did have a printer though for a while, didn't you?
I did. I had a Canon Pixma. I think it's just called Canon Pixma Expensive. Yeah. It was actually the prints. When I did run prints out of it, they were very nice, but really expensive. The ink was really expensive, and I'm sure it's a scam because the inks just dry up. You have a full tank. Yeah. You go and brew a coffee, then you come back and all the ink's gone. It's like it's some kind of special wizardry going on there. Like once it goes back onto us, just disappear, run out of the room. Yeah. And then it makes you buy more, and it's really expensive. Yeah. So I agree with him.
Rivki Lockyer. Let's start again. Oh my God! What is the? Does this get any better over the next couple of months?
No, please, no.
I'm so sorry. Rivki Locker. Right. Hi, Kev. Hi, Neil. First, thanks for the wonderful podcast I listen to on my daily photo nature walks, which is all some people can do now, of course. And that even some areas that you can't even do that now. You guys, well, I think she means you. Hilarious and informative. Thank you for keeping me entertained. On to my question. I'm an experienced photographer. I shot Canon for about 30 years, starting with film, then moving to DSLR, and then transitioned to Fujifilm a few years ago. Recently decided to go back to basics, dust off the old analog film gear. I have my late father's Nicomatic 35mm SLR gathering dust in the closet. I sent that in for a good cleaning and also ordered a Minolta body on eBay. While I'm waiting for those to arrive, I was wondering if you have any experience shooting films or any tips to offer on the process. I'm not looking to do my own developing at this point, but any feedback on the gear or the shooting process? Well, I'll tell you what, Rivki, you've been in this longer than we have. So
that's what I was thinking.
I've got limited experience. I used a hang on a minute. I used a
Nikon
F5 for that's going to tickle me now. F5 for many years. A good old
Nikon
F5, and I thought that was great. I loved it. It is like carrying a brick around. You wouldn't want to be hit with one of those. But I love the process of that. But I don't miss shooting film.
No, I've never really done it. I actually have about 7 or 8 film cameras that I've collected over the years, all that work, and I've run a few little cases, canisters of film through them, and I've always sent them off to be processed, and they've always come back really rubbish.
And then Stanley Opperman, just finally today. Hi Neil and Kev, new arrival to the FujiCast podcast. I've been happily working my way through the episodes on the start, working professionally for 4 years, mainly event and conference photographing. He had a question. He heard the Keith Bernstein interview, saw the website to say it would be his dream job in filming. So my question is, can you offer any advice or insight into how to work in the film stills photographing industry? I personally can't, because I've never worked in it. But you spent some time with him, didn't you? Because you shared a stage with dear Keith.
I did. We both had our red shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually I don't know whether that was something we ever discussed, how he got into it. Remember, he was a photojournalist of some caliber way before he became a film stills photographer.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing there was some kind of overlap there, perhaps some kind of press contacts or something. Really don't know. But I would imagine it's the same as anything. You know, you've got to bang on the doors. You've got to, get in touch with the people who do and who are willing to talk to you about it. Maybe, I don't know, wherever you live. I mean, we, partly because of where we live, we actually have a lot of filming goes on around here. Right. And, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, whether that's, if you have kind of local films being made or TV shows or whatever, go up and just say, hey, how do you get into this? Okay, can I take some pictures? Or, do you know somebody here who can help me? And, I don't know.
One thing you could try, to just leapt into my mind, actually, a friend of mine is a low budget movie maker. Has made some quite good low budget horror movies, actually. I'm not quite sure that Kev would want to go and spend time on a low budget horror movie with this chap, but if you approach the small budget filmmakers, then they may not have money to pay you. But if you want to get some portfolio stuff going, I'm sure they'd be delighted for you to be doing some set photography. And that will be a really, really good way to build your portfolio, because I have been on a couple of Andy's, that's my mate's sets when he's been making some of these films, and some quite funny films as well. He made one called Kill Keith, which was a movie all about Keith Chegwin, the great, the very funny late.
Seemed to have come true.
Great Keith. No. So, although Keith Chegwin would probably have howled with laughter, you saying that. He's the sort of guy that would. But I remember being on a couple of sets, and there were some stills. Now I think about it, some stills photographers, and I don't think that they were being paid. I think they were there because they wanted to build their portfolios. So that might be a good
I'm sure there's a website, I'm sure, but I will have no idea where, so you'll have to do your own digging for this. But I'm sure there's a website where independent movie makers put out calls for crew, cast, catering, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. And often it's very cheap or free or for experience. So that might be worth searching for. I have no idea what it would be called, but it definitely exists, and it's it's like a casting call, if you like, for small independent movie makers.
And one thing that Keith did say from that interview, I do remember this, is that working mirrorless was a distinct advantage, wasn't it? So there we are. That's something you can say. And working mirrorless, no noise from me, no clicks.
No, although I do love the word blimp.
Blimp. Which is what they put they used to put the cameras in, wasn't it? It was like a big box around your camera, so you couldn't hear it.
Like a big rubber bag.
Most impossible thing to work with. Right, today's interview. Today, we're going to learn a little bit about what it's like to work at the sharp end of photojournalism with the Sun newspaper. I know the Sun newspaper is not everybody's favourite publication. However, I think it's a fascinating insight into working with one of the country's biggest dailies. This is Brad Wakefield. You've been a pro for how long now?
Well, I was trying to figure this out. I spoke to my mum this morning about it, because she used to drive me to jobs for the local paper, and I used to shoot the jobs at the local paper on film.
So you didn't have a
I was 18. Yeah, I didn't get my driving licence till I was the latter end of 18.
So mum was your fixer.
Yeah. So I think that I've been... So I wouldn't... But I hate the term pro. Like, I'm a photographer. I
Okay, so how long have you been drawing some sort of money for? How long has money been exchanged?
Okay, that's a better way of putting it. 15 years.
15. Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
Which is a long time, and I think but doing it full time is 13 years.
Now we're going to dance around a little bit with regards to talking about your time with the press and weddings. Let's talk about your not so humble beginnings in photography. Did you study at college?
I'll go right back to the beginning. I was academically not great at school.
Okay.
I wasn't badly behaved. I just struggled academically, but I loved art. And I wanted to stay on at sixth form. So my drama teacher was kind of like we had like a mentor. She said, well, why don't you do photography? And I was like, well, all right, I'll give it a go. So that's kind of how my photography kind of started. The art department...
Did you not photograph at that time at all?
No, I wasn't bothered about it.
A complete...
No, absolutely not. Like, I just
didn't know what an aperture was or anything?
No, I really liked Jackson Pollock as an artist, and I just thought I'd be the next Jackson Pollock in Cheddar in Somerset. But the whole art department really are responsible for me being here as a photographer. My photography teacher was amazing. Both my art teachers were amazing, and they really inspired me and sort of showed me that you can have a career and a life as a creative. And then obviously I started doing a little bit of the local paper. I worked in Jessop's, and that's kind of how photography began for me, really.
So the local paper then led to the agency, Southwest News Service. There must have been something before that, surely. It seems quite a leap.
It was. I was local paper, doing the odd job, the very odd job. Yeah, that's kind of where it began. And then I worked in a camera shop, but I was always out taking pictures, and then I just approached Southwest News for some work experience. Yeah. And then a couple of weeks later, I was just... right place, right time. They had a trainee job going.
So obviously, during that 5 years, you were still sort of building a portfolio, and you were probably getting better opportunities to work on bigger stories.
Yeah, definitely. During like from the start of my career in agency to the end, you improve as a photographer. You start getting trusted with better jobs. More often than not, those better jobs, or the jobs that need a bit more to them, your name starts rising up through the pitch desks a bit more, and then that all of a sudden, when an opportunity appears, you're perhaps a little bit closer to the top than others. So that the regional photographer for the Sun's good friend of mine, he just kindly put me in contact with the right people, really. And then I went up to Manchester for a year, and then after that year went down into London. So
the Sun. So you joined the Sun. Of course, life would change immeasurably at that moment, wouldn't it? Because you were a staffer, were you a staffer?
No, so the staff photographers, I think Arthur Edwards is the only remaining staff photographer.
So even we're going back a few years, so there were no staff positions even then?
I do fondly look back at my kind of handshake into the Sun. It's I got said that, you need to pop up to London. Yeah. You better come and see one of the deputy editors. So I went and bought a new jumper. Got on the train like as you do, you want to look immaculate.
Well, your new jumper.
Yeah, with my new jumper. Everybody says, right, you need to take a camera. Yeah. Take a camera with you because you're not a photographer without a camera. And they might send you out on a job, which I have heard that had happened, where people, a breaking news story would happen and be like, well, you've got your kit, off you go. So I went up there. It was in...
with your new jumper and your camera.
New jumper, and my camera's in a Billingham bag. I've always had Billingham bags, but I put everything in it because I think, I better have two cameras. I better have everything with it, and it weighed a ton.
But you looked the part.
Yeah, I looked awesome. I didn't look awesome, but I went and met the deputy editor, and honestly, Neil, I was in there less than 5 minutes.
Oh, right.
I went in there. Hi, mate. Yeah, good to meet you. Okay, cool. You been to Manchester before? Yeah, great. When are you moving up there? I was like, all right, let me know when you're there, and I'll catch up with you then. And honest to God, that was the conversation.
So you moved to Manchester because of this kind of odd passing conversation.
And by the way, I'd never been to Manchester.
Right. In your life?
No.
Oh.
No, but I was not. I would have been a fool, wouldn't I? I would have been a fool. So yeah, that was it. And it was.
So I never went to the Manchester office. I only saw the London office of the Sun. But I mean, the aura the moment you walked in. I just remember this big sign saying, "You are now entering Sun Country." Was it similar the way that Manchester worked?
No, I mean, obviously for people listening, they can't see where we are now, but it was a similar setup.
Right.
It was part of a big office block in Manchester, but the space that was for the paper and for their reporters was no more than this, really.
Oh, really?
Because it was a regional kind of corner, and my understanding was that it was there mainly because there's a lot of football up there, and a lot of Coronation Street and stuff like that. And it was it was a way of, from my limited understanding, just being a little bit, just having somewhere else that was a base. Really.
But of course, just down the road was a bit of a no-go zone for anybody involved with the Sun.
Yeah, absolutely was, and it was I was still went to Liverpool for jobs, and they'd still cover stories there. But I also didn't go around, I was respectful enough to not go around and start saying...
You wouldn't flout the fact that you were
No,
working.
absolutely not. I mean, people have got their opinions on that for their own reasons, and I massively respect that.
Yeah.
And I respected it enough that to be honest with you, I rarely got given jobs in Liverpool. And when I did go there, I went to Aintree a couple of times, did Chester races and stuff like that, and it was never an issue for me.
What was being a sun shooter like? It always seemed to me that everybody involved in the paper was part of some sort of fast-moving, almost cliche style, hold the front page style of business, because the Sun was very energetic, wasn't it?
It's quite an experience being at a paper that were so enthusiastic about the paper being a hit every day. But the jobs that I did massively varied. There'd be times where I'll be waiting for somebody to walk out of a door, or there'd be times when I'll be with a celebrity, and in a candid state as well, not just papping them walking down the street, which I think a lot of people think is what I did when I worked for the Sun newspaper, which I understand. There'd be a lot of opportunities that I'd just be all of a sudden be in a room with somebody that I've seen on the TV for the last 20 years, and we're just chatting.
As a door opener, it was a huge opportunity, wasn't it?
100%, yeah, it really was. And I spent a week on a submarine with the British Navy.
Underwater
For a week.
That seems a ridiculous question, but just wanted to check.
No, that's understandable, because I guess it could have been in dock, couldn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely, for a week. And that's an opportunity that even people in the forces don't get. Those opportunities and the foreign travel, albeit it was always on a last minute kind of way, and you never know when you're coming home. Those opportunities were amazing. And I think that's a side of that, understandably, people perhaps wouldn't expect to see or know that you did.
And some of the work was quite hard work. I mean, you showed me your portfolio and the repatriations at Wootton Bassett, for example. Now, that's not an easy story to photograph, and you're a human being as well, and you described one particular moment to me when the hearse had passed by and the mother cried out that she just wanted her son back. Did they take an emotional toll on you as well?
There definitely there are a few moments covering the repatriations in Wootton Bassett where I'd really have a lump in my throat.
Yeah.
Because I'm a human being, and if somebody's upset, it's hard not to be upset. But in terms of taking the pictures, I just have to blank out and just make sure I got it in focus and was doing what I was there to do.
Is it sometimes difficult to raise a camera to your eye at those moments when somebody spots you using it? Even though you've got a job to do and an agenda, and you want to tell the story as empathetically as you can, not everybody sees a press photographer in the same light.
Yeah, definitely. And I tell you, when you catch somebody's eye when you're doing that, people might appreciate this when they photograph a wedding, although a wedding's a happy occasion, it's filled with emotion. Catching the eye of somebody when they're crying and kind of looking as vulnerable as they do is quite difficult as a photographer to kind of push past that and continue to take a picture.
Awkward moment.
And I still find it awkward now. Yeah. I think that every now and again you just get caught off guard and you're like, oh, it's a bit awkward, isn't it?
Well, I've interviewed a fair few press photographers who probably vowed they'd never photograph a wedding, but then ended up being very, very good at it.
Yeah.
Where do you sit in that debate?
Yeah, I think that it's... I'm definitely the first to say that I looked down on wedding photography. And I think that if you spoke to a broad range of working press photographers now, it would be very interesting to see what they thought of wedding photography. But I think a wedding's a big news event. It's just a news event that you're covering. And I think that's the way I look at it.
That's an interesting way to look at it. It's a news event.
It's a news event with a feature.
Do you say that to your clients?
Yeah, some of them don't quite get it.
Right.
I don't play too hard on my newspaper background.
Yeah.
And I think that if you don't follow the news, you perhaps don't understand what I mean when I say a news event. But it's a news event with a feature shoot in the middle, and the feature shoots the pictures of the bride and groom. And that's the way I look at it.
And you're very your style is photojournalistic, obviously. You say with minimal staging. These are your words, that you work unobtrusively, naturally. But it's interesting, even with your news background, that you don't really purport to be a purist photojournalist at weddings. Do you think that that's a good thing? Do you think if you're a purist, it makes... And we've talked about this, I've talked about this with Kevin many, many times. Does it make it harder to get clients now?
I think that people want great pictures from their wedding. And I think that I've got the responsibility as a photographer, if they hire me, to deliver a great set of pictures. I think that I do have a purist approach, but I'm not afraid to talk or get involved to get the best pictures. I'm not going to start going up to somebody and saying you need to cry. I was always told when I worked for a press agency that it's your responsibility to get the picture, whether that's collecting an image from somebody else, or whether that's making the picture work. Is it moving somebody to the side? Is it doing this? Is it doing that?
So would you move people?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, at least you're honest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've got I'm
smiling a bit because I know you paid somebody 20 quid to jump in the mud at Glastonbury.
But that's but it worked. People might frown upon stuff like that.
Yeah.
My opinion is that if you're frowning upon stuff like that, you've never done it.
Yeah.
You've never had to work as a photographer. I think it's very easy to go, you shouldn't do that. But I tell you what, getting to midday before the newspapers go into conference, getting phone calls saying that you need pictures is stressful.
Wedding work, it's become more and more competitive in the time that you've been doing it. How have you seen it change?
It's really competitive, isn't it? But I shot my first wedding in 2010.
So in a decade, I know it's changed immensely.
So I only shot one wedding then.
Okay.
So it's gone up and then I shot a couple and then...
Right. Well, it's changed immeasurably in a decade.
Massively.
I'd say it's an entirely different industry to where it was 10 years ago.
It is. I think it's really difficult to answer questions like this without sounding a bit moany and a bit long in the tooth, isn't it? I still feel like I'm at the bottom and I've got a lot to learn, and I'm not trying to be deliberately modest. I think that's the truth, and I feel like we're flooded with a lot of people that you might be able to take a one-hit wonder, and we can all take one-hit wonders, but there's a lot more to it, and you'll know that from your experience. It's dealing with people that are being difficult with you. It's dealing when it's raining outside. How are you going to overcome the camera failure at the wedding?
Actually, sometimes having images that a client doesn't like.
Yeah, exactly, and that happens.
Yeah,
that's a thing, and I think, but a lot of people don't want to say that. Like it's. I asked you and Kevin a question a couple of weeks ago about criticism, and it's about how people, criticism's a real big part of what we do. I talk to my wife about my pictures. She'll tell me if she doesn't like them, but I think that's important.
Yeah.
And I find that hard to deal with sometimes.
I've always thought you have to have a USP. You've got various USPs. Obviously, you're not the only press photographer that's now a wedding photographer, but it's a good selling point. And also, your drone work looks very, very good. And obviously, you've done something that I think a lot of other drone operators who, prior to having to have the correct license, just gave up when it came along. So is drone work quite important to you? Is it part of your unique selling proposition?
Drone work is... You need the bride and groom to be 100% on board with that. And at that point, I'm not a documentary wedding photographer.
No.
I don't have a problem with that.
You've suddenly got to set up an exclusion zone for the takeoff.
Yeah, and then you've got to convince somebody to lie down in their £2,000 wedding dress. But it's, I think that the drone work's fun, and I think I probably get 3 or 4 couples a year that will just on board and they'll want to do it. And I get other people that don't.
It's not
no, it's fine. I mean, I think that it's...
But sometimes I think having that work online means that people are drawn to your work, and they don't even employ you for that, but they're drawn to you through that.
It's a talking point, isn't it?
It's a talking point.
Yeah, it's a talking point.
That's why USPs are important.
Yeah, but I think that it's... I think the photography is just so subjective, isn't it? I mean, we're all out there just trying to dangle a fishing rod to try and just tap into somebody in some way and just hope they can see what you see and kind of love what you love and kind of trust you.
What's the proudest moment you've ever had? What's the picture? This is very difficult to answer. What's that picture? Not necessarily a wedding. Could be a press and PR picture. That picture where you think, do you know, I nailed that. That pretty much explains me.
I don't know if it explains me. Well, it might do, thinking about it a bit deeper. I showed you a picture of Lady Gaga that I took at Glastonbury. It's the only picture that I've ever taken in my career that I don't know how I could improve it.
Interesting.
I mean, you're welcome to have a look at it, and please do.
I'll study it more now.
Please do. It's
that shadow's not right there.
I know, yeah. But it's it's vibrant and colourful, which I think that I like to portray in my wedding work. I think that if you look at my wedding work, it'll look vibrant and colourful. I love clean backgrounds. It's well composed. It's the only picture I think I've taken that I don't know how I could improve.
My thanks to Brad Wakefield for his time. And in case you're thinking, that's a bit strange, they definitely were not 2 meters apart. That's because that interview was recorded in the studio, face-to-face, about 7 days before the lockdown happened. So, it was the last time I think somebody sat in this studio. I think you came in a couple of days later to record a couple of episodes, and then that was it. We were locked down.
Do you remember the days? Do you remember those days when we used to see each other and have a nice coffee? And,
I know.
You know, occasionally we'd be nice to each other, remember each other's names, things like that.
Yeah. And of course, those days were. Are you still a plant-based eater, or have you relented and eating a bit of?
No, I'm still doing my bit. Although I have had a little bit of cheese on some stuff.
Have you?
But just because it's the cupboard has been getting a bit barer as time goes by.
But certainly, I'll tell you what, it's certainly less bearable.
But no, so today, for example, Rosa and Albie, bless them, they are doing a restaurant day for us. So they're cooking us a 3-course meal tonight. They're gonna, me and Gemma are gonna dress up and go to the restaurant in our kitchen, and they're gonna be the chefs and the waiters. And Rosa's made a bread and butter pudding because I love that. That's my favourite thing. So I will have a bit of butter in bread and butter pudding. Yeah. And we're having a curry. I'm going to have mushroom curry, and Gemma's going to have some other probably more tasty curry.
So eating out in posh style.
Very la-di-da.
Very la-di-da, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then I expect we'll end up having to do the washing up.
Because you haven't paid your bill.
Yeah.
We had you pointed out an interesting little email that came in from Chartable. We're doing quite well in the charts now, aren't we? Eh?
In the hit parade.
Highest position, 29. Whoa, look at that.
And but that's in the global Chartable charts, which is, I noticed the other day we were number 2 in the arts charts in the UK and Apple charts, which was great. Number 2, but those Apple charts are very fluid; they move up and down.
Yeah.
But I'm really pleased on this one. I'm looking on the Chartable charts because we are ahead of serial killers.
No way, are we? Well.
Serial killers.
Well, that's all down to you. Thank you very much for listening. And do, by the way, please keep sending your questions in. Click at FujiCast.co.uk. I'm very aware now that we have a lot more people that don't necessarily shoot Fujifilm. So your stories about your photographic lives as well will be great. Questions, of course, that we can try and dig into. And, of course, keep sending the Fuji questions in because Kev's still here with his mountain of knowledge about Fuji kit. But please keep sending those in because we haven't said it for a long time. You are the lifeblood of the show. When you do that kind of thing.
But try and only use words with less than 4 sibilants.
Sibilants.
Please.
Easy for you to say. Oh, dear. Right. I'm going to go away and try and edit this, or just think, let's leave all the mistakes in. That might be more fun.
Do it.
See you later, Kev.
Ta-da. Bye.
Nikon.
The FujiCast is an independent loading zone production. Email the show with your questions and words of wisdom to click@fujicast.co.uk. Email any complaints and political nonsense to our wives, who will deal with your comments in their own good time and in their own good way.